lions, antelopes, giraffes, and the rest. He also loved a lot of fruits. Thank you. He loved fruits, so he planted some apples inside the presidency between the house and the office. Then he began to notice that his apples were disappearing. And he shouted on all of us to say that the bodyguards around are busy taking his apples, and that is indiscipline. Then one day on our way back from office to the house, the giraffe was busy eating all the apples. Sluggishly, majestically. Then he decided to turn his face to the left, not to see the giraffe. So noticing this and knowing the instructions he gave earlier, so I said it loud. We had some ministers, all the principal staff on our way to the office. I said, if this giraffe knows that the commander-in-chief is passing, it would have disappeared. He still turned left. And then when I insist, he said, everybody has eyes. Who allowed the giraffe to do up? Excellent sense of humor, a real father indeed. Mr. Chairman, our distinguished mother, a very rare personality, members of the high table, Your Excellencies, former military administrator and representatives of governors, distinguished speakers, brothers and sisters here present, the organizers, ladies and gentlemen. I deliberately decided to start with this joke because numerous people do not know how humane, how simple he was, how understanding and caring he was. When he began to tolerate, everybody gets worried in the real display of patience. But then so many speakers came to the fore and said so much about him. Deliberately, I don't want to repeat anything said by the past speakers. But I asked myself some questions. I didn't write any speech. I was actually reflecting and jotting tiny little things right here. The question is, this type of gathering, until after his death, one may ask, why now? 23 years after. Now, before I go into a few things I will say, I want to seek for protection from the chairman and our respected mother that some speakers did not get notice that they had 3 minutes left. So all those who haven't had their notices, I want to compile the remaining minutes of theirs to mine. And I'm sure silence means approval. I thank you. Now God Almighty speaks to mankind using numbers. The last of his prophets was Prophet Muhammad, who came 600 years after Jesus. But since then, every event of man, every person, man or woman, to those who died and to those who are living and those to come, God speaks to mankind using numbers, nothing more. It's a science that we need to know. So the person we are talking about had had his transition well defined by God Almighty. God uses 4 angels, jinns, and mankind from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, from 9, then 0. No any other figure. So anything you are doing is calculated based on the figures given by God Almighty. And to those who see behind the wall, figures speaks. Now, one may ask, when was he born? He was born on the 20th September 1943. Add all the numbers, you will see 10. But 10, 0 is just 0 when you begin to count in this way. So it was 1. He came to power on 17th November 1993. Add up all the figures, you will have 14. 1 plus 4 will give you 5. You see, nobody can change destiny. General Abacha was to become Nigeria's head of state on the 15th November, 1993. But the then head of interim government went to Port Harcourt. He was to return on the 14th, but there was riot in Port Harcourt. He was torn and delayed. Movement of the then head of state, Chief Enos Shenokon, couldn't be possible to the airport. So there was delay. Arrangements were made. He returned to Abuja on the 16th. On the 17th, the day he was ordained to become, was the day he was able to come to Abuja. Whether he himself loved it, liked it or not, destiny was on him to be on the 17th. Nothing was to change it. Man arranged 15. God decided it was 17. So all we were doing was figures being calculated in the life of man, being propelled by destiny. Now, it could have been 3 if you had calculated it, but God decided to make it 5. So the day he came to power was 5. The day he died was the 8th of June, 1998. If you add up all the numbers using the calculations I talked about, you will also arrive at 5. If you add it up all together, you will see you have 11 in this type of counting. Today, that's why I said, why now? Today, 23 years after, I'm sure the organizers themselves might not know, but they have been propelled by events, time, been driven with an energy of destiny. So today is the day to kickstart something we know not. Today is the 25th of September 2021. If you add it up all together, you will come up with a figure called 3. Add it up all together. You will have 14. 1 plus 4 will give you 5. General Abacha was born he came to power on 5. He died on 5. He was given birth to on 1. Add it up all together, you will see something new. First, he was ordained to become Nigeria's head of state. Number 10 is the same date of birth of his. He couldn't change it, and no human could have changed it. So if you add it up, number 10th president, born on the 10th in this spiritual type of way of counting, were his individual destiny. Alongside his individual destiny, he is to come to meet numerous individuals, collective destiny. Those who served with him, those who went to war with him, those he served himself. So many died, so many are there writing his history, their own history, with a portion that he occupied. When he became head of state, it was also a documented, saturated history for those who are left behind to document. We have a challenge. That's why, with admiration, I respect the organizers, and I respect you for being very dogmatic against all odds, all the challenges, abuses you have had, yet today is the day. When you are being challenged, unknown to you, you are only in school, so that your shock absorbers could get reinforced. But today, here we are. This is the day it is said to be. And here we are, a day that is considered 3, which has a meaning. So all these figures I talked about, his date of birth, came to power, the day he came to power, the day he left us, he died, and then today, put it together, is a message for all of us that nobody can stop. This hall might be small, I understand. There are numerous and numerous of millions of Nigerians that would have wished to be here, but they are still afraid. Now goes into my own speech. The effect of propaganda in any society. Propaganda is a tool being used that determines, even at war, the success of the war before firing the first salvo is propaganda. It attacks the psyche of man. It creates fears and doubts to people, particularly if the propaganda is sustained and challenged. So here we are with propaganda that was sustained, invested upon with state funds that lasted 23 years till this moment. Many people are still afraid. But here, alongside, since after his death, some of us were subjected to what nobody can describe. From my younger brother here, who was subjected to inhumane treatment, not because he was a military officer or he worked with us in the military then, even though he has his own military background, but was subjected to what you cannot describe in a quick time. For the 3 years he was with us, when we were going through what we went through, he saw the little portion of it. Abuses, torture, deprivation of food, all because we knew Abacha. Deprivation of sleep, beating, handcuffs, hands, legs, and chain, and legs, and neck, sorry. And then with all forms that you cannot understand, was simply because we walked with him and we stood by him. But to persecutors, I tell them one little thing. All persecutors in the history of man, from Adam to date and to the end of time, are cowards. They are. Persecutors are those who destroy nations. Persecutors kill the institutions that governs a country. Persecutors are monsters at the surface, but super cowards right inside them. That's why when some of us were being taken through what we went through, we were promised death severally to be able to read counter statements against the person we are all standing here for. Thank God Almighty for the shock absorbers we have gotten. And thank God Almighty for our faith. Propaganda winds out by time. Time and events are designed by God Almighty. Numerous things must happen naturally or artificially. So propaganda winds out. That is why to those who started and invested the propaganda against the man and his government we are talking about today, began to, at interval time, they come up with the same sponsored abuses of the same man we are talking about and government, to be able to keep it rekindled. So they are always lightening the candle. No, once the wind of time blows it out, they rekindle it by resurfacing it. That's why today, since I regained my freedom, I have conducted numerous researches secretly. And I will say this about the media, most humbly. There are many of them, highly professional, excellent character, excellent backgrounds, but they are enrolled in numerous parts of media. Some of them knows the truth, but they are only told to carry what they see and print it. But right inside them, their conscience, they know that that is not right and it is not true. In a court of law, they cannot prove themselves. They cannot prove what they have written. There are many of them. Many have spoken, but many are still afraid because of their jobs. And to so many, the little peanut salary they get is all they have. And there is fear of losing their jobs. So till tomorrow, some of them are still subjected to that tight corner of the effect of propaganda, and they have to do it for their jobs. Second is the issue of presentation of facts that winds out propaganda, like what we are doing here today. The description they gave in these 23 years, what the little we have seen in less than this barely 4 hours, it has shown that this little drop of facts has actually dwindled and dwarfed the pyramid of lies we have seen built over 23 years. If we continue, if only we can continue, we are not saying bring lies, we are not saying cook it and present it to the fore. All we are saying is present facts. And then numerous people, particularly persecutors, they hate the word facts. They hate the word honesty. They hate the word loyalty. They hate the word commitment. They hate the word understanding and subjecting sacrifice to your country. Every person that you see that hates these 5 words is nothing but a persecutor. He should not be seen to participate in the affairs of the state. As I said this, I'm sure if there are people who are watching me from somewhere, to them, I'm pouring hot water to them. To the faithful, they know we are speaking the truth. Now, there are numerous things said by numerous speakers And I want to say, when General Abacha came to power, there was no money in Nigeria at all. I was part and parcel when he became head of state. On the 17th, around 6 in the evening, we came to the airport from the villa. Then he hadn't gone in there. He took a pen and a biro, writing his plans and vision for Nigeria. He didn't understand where we were, but he was busy writing for Nigeria. Economic issues, political issues, national security issues, all the dots left was what he was focusing upon writing from that moment. I held that paper. I kept it hidden till another day. While he was doing that, I also became encouraged. And I wrote something little as a baby then. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm envisioning the office I'm to occupy. What is it all about?" I said, "Sir, there have been mistakes of the office of CSO, then CPA. It was called CPA. It was totally, to me, very ceremonial office, and there was the need for professionalism and seriousness. So I came up with that office, a little structure. The next day, in resumption of office, he wrote approved on what I sent. That is how I changed the word CPA to CSO. And thank God, throughout his tenure, we were busy building up machineries that was to work in containing crisis for Nigeria. We were privileged working with him since Army headquarters to know that since 1972, Nigeria was 12 years old as an independent state. With the discovery of oil and with the performance of General Gawan then as head of state, some certain forces came together and said, it will be disheartening to see us serve this same former colony of ours as now subordinates. That was why at that material time, a new program came up on how to dwarf Nigeria. And I challenge the academia, I challenge patriots, I challenge leaders to go and search for that document and look at the arrangements of dividing Nigeria, creating crisis in Nigeria, creating differences between Muslims and Christians, creating differences between northerners and southerners, creating differences in Nigeria that will dwarf us. And where such things refuse to work, causes of insurgency should be invested upon and be promoted, so that Nigeria should remain dwarfed and never to grow. The fear is, allow this country to be. We will all be there as subordinates working for them. And no black man should be seen, particularly West Africa and Nigeria, as a subject should be allowed to grow. It's a challenge to the academia, a challenge to the younger ones, a challenge to all patriots and all leaders, old and young, to understand that there is a game that will never allow us to grow. We will be fighting ourselves while they are busy taking what we have. These are some of the things General Abacha went against. General Abacha went against, and he became an enemy to that group outside and to their cronies in Nigeria. Some of them are highly, highly respected elder statesmen. To me, I have seen all what persecution is all about. There is no fear. If you like, carry gun tomorrow and chase me out. But remember, you did it 15 years ago while I was in incarceration. Today I'm free like you. You throw a stone, we throw a medal. When you are talking about your country, there is no holds bar in such statement. Every patriot should begin to ask himself, why was I created in that country? God didn't consult any of us here or anywhere or any mankind to say, I will create you a human being on so-so date in so-so country. Wherever you see yourself, that's where God Almighty wants you to serve. And to serve Him and to serve that country without fear or favor, as it is contained in the oath of offices that elected leaders used to take on with. But you see, ours is ceremonial. We take oath, but 10 seconds after, we change it into totally something, nothing, that God Almighty will ask us for. Now, in this spirit with which General Abacha governed Nigeria, the West Coast was also engulfed with similar problems that was targeted at Nigeria. Which were these countries? Sierra Leone, Gambia, and Liberia. General Abacha took it upon himself to extend services, because in his later agendas of helping Nigeria, there was the larger also mobilization he was doing for leaders across the world that many people didn't know. What was it all about? Restoration of the value of black man world over. A black man is reduced to nothing. That we should first of all occupy our position within Committee of Nations and in the world as black men and women across the world. This is the laudable program he was embarking on quietly. That's why after his death, there are numerous leaders in Africa and outside Africa who acknowledge this and who are still having it with them to be seen to synergize with anybody like this that will one day come up to dust up his diary of events so that the world will benefit. But to some of us, those programs that brought him enemies at home and abroad, we are keen in it squarely and we are not taking an inch out of it. To those who want to believe us, please do. And to those who want to fight us, please do. And I'll give a little example of the man in him. He takes every responsibility as a mission. I will give this little example. While he was in power, Gambia, Sierra Leone, and Liberia were directly being managed by him. So the presidencies of these three countries were also manned. All the presidents of this country were directly manned by us, and he directed us to do so. One day, our boys were attacked around 4 a.m. Thank you, 30 minutes.
2 minutes.
No, you have taken my 15 minutes, so thank you. There is the need to illustrate this, to show that his commitment was not to Nigeria alone. When President Tijan Kaba was attacked at 4 a.m., it was a coup. His family were dislodged. The few boys from Nigeria, from out of us, were able to have secured him on our directives. And then he was able to have been taken to Longye Airport, and then while he was there, a decision came to my mind to say that he should be moved to Guinea. I called the president of Guinea, who was at that time the chairman of ECOWAS, with our ambassador. They received him using Charlie 130, using Donia aircraft. While President Tanja was there, President Tijan Kaba was there, now I know him and the family were secured. So now I talked to the late head of state on telephone. He didn't know what happened. I said, so has just happened in Sierra Leone. He kept quiet. And later he said, the coup must fail. President do you hear me?
Sorry.
The coup must fail. Tijan Kaba must be returned as president. Start working, get service chiefs to work. This has to happen. We can no longer accept it. He spoke as if he was speaking on behalf of Nigeria. He spoke as if it is him. As if it is him that was attacked. For 15 days, we walked, day and night. We couldn't go home, we couldn't take bath. But God Almighty helped us. We walked it out, went to Liberia, went to Sierra Leone. We couldn't go to Guinea because it was, we couldn't go to Sierra Leone, it was blocked. We met him in Guinea and agreed with him on certain modalities. And by the grace of God, in 15 days, he was returned and sworn in by this same General Sani Abacha. Something that has never happened by any power, anywhere. Nothing like this has ever happened. Yet he is a man to attack. I can understand those who saw him as a rival were doing so out of jealousy. Small-minded people. During his time, and for the first time in Nigeria, and because of his commitment to show that there must be justification of action in anything we do in this administration, this was the watchwords. That is how God Almighty gave us the know-how to have documented every coup with electronic evidence, video and audio, and the entire world began to copy from him. Then the issue of states. Yes, 6 states were created, but we forgot he also added 700, he added local governments to 774. He added numerous wards across the country and every state benefited. Every state, I repeat, benefited. But we are quick to forget. Today, we lost Bakassi shamefully, and I know if he were to be alive, Bakassi would have been the 774th local government. Bakassi was made a local government, meaning 774. But today, we lost Bakassi. We are still counting it as a 774th local government. While it's not part of us, it's part of Cameroon. The question is, where is the accountability of that lost government? We are supposed to be 773 local governments. Who is taking money on behalf of the 774th? That is Bakassi. It can happen during his time. All institutions were brought to work. Every institution were submissive. They knew there were questions to be asked. They knew routines were established according to the law, and it was being done. To any person who is ready to provide leadership to Nigeria with such doctrine and such approach should be prepared to be bashed, to be accused, to be used. General Abacha was abused, was accused, even while he was in power. Numerous papers were writing numerous things. Literature being sent or prepared at home, and some coming from outside. He stood it and still maintained his ground, and we were working right. And then, for the benefit of the doubt, General Abacha did not, even in 1997, reduce his focus to the oil Nigeria had. He consulted a lot of international bodies, even satellite, to know what we had as a country. That's why from north to south, there were records of how rich this country is endowed with. But the shallow-minded are busy looking at oil only and little gas. But today, if the key, any typical intellectual is asked, is Nigeria an oil-producing state? Or he will tell you it's an oil-producing state. But in reality, as far back as 1997, General Abacha knew Nigeria was a gas-producing state with numerous, I repeat, solid mineral resources that bigger countries cannot think of. So we are endowed with. That's why, at this point, to some of us who are still crisscrossing, contacting people from across and outside Nigeria, is for us to now scientifically identify who we are as a country, what we are endowed with from God Almighty, and how we can utilize it and occupy a position high up within Committee of Nations in this country. Now the issue of dirty budget politics, whosoever, no matter how strong you are, so long you come forward to checkmate that, you will be called names. Those who may be around you will be the same people to invest in abusing you indirectly. There are direct abuses and there are indirect abuses in the propaganda we saw so far. And finally, the issue of looting. I'm never afraid to speak about it. I was tortured beyond understanding by those who persecuted me. I was promised death severally by leaders of this country at the time we were going through what we were going through. There are basic questions I ask at any time I was told to make statements. One thing I will say, and if it is out of protocol, I beg your pardon. I'm talking from the point of view of pain. The family General Abacha left behind were bashed, abused, accused, called names. Little children could not understand what papers were writing. And the question here is, if a persecutor has money and the mischief to continue to sustain his propaganda, what becomes of the family and the associates standing on their feet to fight back? Be that you say, no, it's C after all. And then to those who are sponsoring the propaganda, you see they go through indirect means. You will see papers come up with it. The simple questions one may ask is, who owned this paper? How many shares are these persecutors having in that paper? Who is sponsoring the papers? We don't ask. But the moment you step forward, a persecutor is just naturally chicken-hearted. That's why mischief is the oxygen he inhales. Unless you attack the oxygen, he will not understand we exist. And to him, your silence means approval, they will continue to attack. So let me say this. This family has, by time, in the disservice of the persecutors, created or have gotten natural shock absorber. Let whosoever wish to say whatever he wishes to say. Let whosoever wish to sponsor whatever he wishes to. Remember, you are created individually. We are now on collective drive. We met, we are moving together. As members of Nigeria, be on your feet. We all have destiny. That will come to pass. And lastly, let any persecutor or persecutors in Nigeria or outside Nigeria with their own allies team up together. Tell them there was not, there is not, and there will never be any force that will change destiny. Thank you so much.